Hey there, welcome back to the AniMonolith series, summarizing that time I got reincarnated as a slime. Let's jump back to the 700,000 Imperial Army led by Kalgurio. The troops were calmly and systematically entering the labyrinth. Each soldier had a rope tied to their waist, connected in lines with 3-meter intervals. At the front were mages specializing in trap detection. Rescue personnel moved freely, ready to pull anyone out in case of emergency. Items collected from within the labyrinth were passed back through the line and delivered to headquarters. Thanks to thorough research and training, everything was going smoothly. No one was getting lost. Meanwhile, Kalgurio was at his command tent, dreaming about the unimaginable riches he was about to seize. In his mind, victory was inevitable. He had heard reports claiming the labyrinth had only 60 floors, but there were rumors of 100. To him, that just meant more treasure to plunder. He believed every monster had a weakness, and once they figured out the rules, the labyrinth would fall easily. But slowly, things started to go wrong. Every time 1,000 soldiers entered the labyrinth, the structure seemed to shift, rerouting them somewhere unknown. Contact was lost completely. Ropes were cleanly severed, as if space itself had warped. The command staff grew uneasy, but Kalgurio insisted the advance continue. He thought Tempest was just trying to stall, buying time for reinforcements. But what reinforcements? Dworgen and the Jura Federation should have already been crushed by now, he thought. By the end of day one, 350,000 soldiers had entered the labyrinth. No communications, no supply transfers, no one came back. Kalgurio began to grow restless. Just how massive was this labyrinth? His original plan had been to overwhelm it with numbers, throw in all 700,000 troops and sweep every floor. But with half his army already inside and no sign of progress, that plan was clearly falling apart. Then came a glimmer of hope. A missing unit was found. The whole camp breathed a sigh of relief. Morale spiked. Maybe, just maybe, Kalgurio was right all along. It was just a trick to wear down the Empire's resolve. The rescued soldiers reported that in order to escape the labyrinth, they needed to defeat 10 bosses and collect 10 keys. Only then could they unlock the gate to the final floor and face the labyrinth's last guardian. Kalgurio guessed the final boss must be Rimuru himself. But if so, 350,000 troops should be more than enough to crush a demon lord. At least that's what he and his staff believed. Still, contact with the army inside remained completely severed. Kalgurio ordered his subordinates to try every method to re-establish communication. All attempts failed. Desperate, he sent in 150,000 more soldiers on day 2, followed by 30,000 more on day 3. But just like before, as soon as they entered the gate, all communication was cut off. Now both old and new units had gone silent. No word from Faraga or Gester either. Scouts sent to Jura to check on the tank division also vanished. But Kalgurio still refused to accept the possibility of failure. He chalked it up to magical interference. "It's just a trick to scare us into giving up," he told his officers. But even as he said it, a chilling thought crept into his mind. Maybe I've made a terrible mistake. He turned toward the labyrinth's entrance. The towering gate, once a symbol of riches, now loomed like the maw of a beast. Silent, unmoving, and terrifying. And soon Kalgurio would find out what truly awaited inside. Kalgurio wondered what the fate of the soldiers was now. At this time, in the floor areas, the Imperial soldiers were facing death in various ways. Those assigned to floors 41 to 48 were considered the lucky ones. The monsters here were mostly B rank or below, no match for the Empire's elite enhanced soldiers. The conquest progressed smoothly, with the Imperial army quickly sweeping through these floors. In less than 3 days, they reached the 48th floor. But the nightmare began on floor 49. Slimes, everywhere. They dropped from ceilings, oozed from walls, and coated the floor. Giant, near-invincible slimes swarmed the soldiers, dissolving armor and sapping stamina. Their physical resistance was high, and they multiplied rapidly. Even though losses were still manageable, the time it took to clear the floor caused serious delays. It wasn't until the end of day 3 that they finally pushed through. And then came floor 50, the den of Tempest Serpents. In narrow corridors, these monsters sprayed poison as far as 7 meters. Their armored scales deflected bullets and magic alike. Worse, they revived every 3 hours, making conventional strategies nearly useless. Reinforcements and heavy magic cannons were deployed, but even then, it wasn't until midnight of day 3 that the Serpents were finally defeated. The troops took a short rest on floor 51 and began reorganizing. But floor 52 brought a different kind of horror. Deadly traps that mimicked chemical warfare. Tasteless, odorless gases that scorched eyes and throats. acid sprays, neurotoxic mist. No monsters here, but instead, floating puppets powered by mana attacked relentlessly. They could self-repair and had to be taken down using specific methods, wasting both time and manpower. By floor 55, survivors started whispering about 5 unique monsters roaming the floors. A golden skeleton, a reaper-like ghost, living armor, a red slime, and a tiny dragon. All of them were abnormally powerful, and no one had managed to defeat them. Many soldiers had already fallen to these threats. Finally, on floor 60, the troops encountered Gadara and his giant golem. This magestial juggernaut was immune to bullets, blades, and even magic cannons. It was constantly surrounded by a powerful barrier, rendering most attacks useless. Some soldiers even claimed the golem spoke with Gadara's voice. As troops poured in, the labyrinth's death toll skyrocketed. The Empire's invasion force was being slowly but surely crushed. Their ambition turned into a blood-soaked tragedy. At the same time, over on floors 61 to 70, things were looking smooth, at first. The Imperial soldiers were initially up against only weak necromancers and undead, which posed little challenge. By the end of the first day, they had already conquered floors 61 through 69 with ease. But everything changed the moment they stepped onto floor 70. Before them sprawled a vast, desolate land of hills and ruin. A massive gate as large as the labyrinth's entrance itself loomed ahead. It opened into a cursed city reeking of death, a place that seemed torn straight from the underworld. Without much hesitation, a force of over 10,000 soldiers stormed the city ruins. Then it began. A towering skeleton appeared and spoke in a chilling human voice. "Welcome to my domain of death. I am the immortal king, Adelman. The banquet is ready. Enjoy your last moments. Now, let the fun begin." The air turned suffocating. Moments later, a massive death dragon descended, its breath corroding everything it touched. The soldiers realized too late. This wasn't just another monster. This was a creature of pure immortality, immune to ordinary attacks. Only soul-based magic could harm it. But that wasn't enough. One by one, soldiers fell. Those exposed to the dragon's miasma didn't just die. They rose again as undead, joining Adelman's growing army. In less than an hour, the entire 10,000-man force was wiped out. A second wave entered. Same result. By the end of the day, Adelman had over 40,000 undead soldiers, many of whom were former Imperial troops now turned into zombies. The few survivors fled, spreading word of the horror that waited on floor 70. On the fourth attempt, the Empire launched its largest offensive yet. 70,000 troops were deployed in an all-out assault. This time, they brought their best. Powerful holy magic users, elite soldiers, and their strongest magical weapons. The battle began with overwhelming firepower. The Death Dragon was hit with holy spells. Magic cannons thundered. The army gave it everything they had. But Adelman wasn't done yet. You're not thinking clearly. Extra skill, holy demonic reversal. With that, Adelman flipped the rules of combat. Holy attacks, once his weakness, were now useless, or even turned into power for him. The Empire's final trump card failed. The 70,000-strong force was decimated. Survivors, broken and terrified, fled upward. They no longer cared about victory, treasure, or conquest. All that remained was the desperate will to survive. On floors 71 to 79, the Imperial soldiers found themselves locked in an endless battle with massive insects. These weren't your average bugs, they were enormous, fast, and dangerously strong. Still, thanks to their disciplined training and sheer numbers, the soldiers quickly adapted and pushed forward. By the end of the first day, they had reached floor 79. Spirits were high, magic crystals were piling up, rare treasures were being unearthed, and some soldiers even celebrated finding high-grade equipment. They laughed, talked about the bonuses they'd earned, and toasted to what felt like one of their most profitable missions yet. But on day 2, everything changed. As they were marching through floor 79, one soldier suddenly looked over and saw his comrade's head had dropped to the ground, cleanly severed, blood spraying into the air. A voice echoed across the floor like a melody from hell. "What a wonderful day it's been, waiting for you all to gather. So many prey. Thanks for working so hard. Now die, and become our food." It was the voice of Apito, the insect queen, guardian of floor 79. Within seconds, a swarm of over 1,000 wasps filled the air. Each was around 30 centimeters long, moving faster than the eye could track. These were army wasps, loyal to Apito. Their wings vibrated with high-frequency energy, turning into blades. their stings hit with the force of an A-rank disaster. Assassination was their specialty. Soldiers had no chance to scream, no time to aim. Heads flew, blood sprayed, bodies fell. To even detect one of these wasps, you'd need thought acceleration or super speed reaction, abilities far beyond normal humans. Without those, even elite troops were no better than practice dummies. In less than 10 minutes, every single Imperial soldier on the floor was slaughtered. The paradise of crystals and treasures had become a killing field, a Pedo's hive, and their grave. At the same time, on floors 81 to 90, where Kumara reigned, the pattern was similar to other sections of the labyrinth. On the first day, Imperial soldiers stormed through floor 81, cutting down magic beasts and gathering magic crystals. Spirits were high. They believed this would be another profitable conquest. But on the second day, the sweetness turned bitter. Kumara's 8 tails, each manifesting as a different beast, began their slaughter. On the 82nd floor in the jungle here appeared Byakuran, the white monkey, a being of storm and sorcery. It could fly, speak, summon typhoons, and launch vacuum blades. Wielding a staff and gravity-defying martial arts, it attacked whenever Imperial troops amassed in large enough numbers. Then, just as swiftly, it would vanish. No one could touch it. Soldiers could only wait, dreading when they would be the next to die. Floor 83, a peaceful grassy plain, became a death zone under the moonlight. Get, the moon rabbit controlled gravity and struck without discrimination, foe and ally alike. As the moon waxed to full, Get's power grew and so did the death toll. The 84th floor, a labyrinth of cobblestone streets. Soldiers collapsed from thirst, their water supplies tainted by airborne poisons. Healing magic failed. They overlooked the true threat: tiny black rats. Kokuso's minions, carriers of a deadly disease. With no medics or means of cure, death spread like wildfire. Floor 85. In a forest shrouded in lightning, the soldiers met Raikou, the Thunder Tiger. Once the soldiers held the upper hand, but when Raikou entered the field, they were pushed back to the stairs. The storm of thunder and lightning turned the battlefield into a slaughterhouse. Floor 86. A searing desert by day, freezing wasteland by night. The troops blamed fatigue on the climate, but the real killer was hidden. Yoda, the winged serpent, was controlling the atmosphere, sapping the oxygen. Soldiers dropped dead in their sleep, never realizing they had suffocated. Floor 87. Rolling hills that lured soldiers into nostalgic dreams of home. It was a trap. Mink, the hypnotic sheep, lulled them into eternal slumber. They fell asleep missing their families and never woke up again. Floor 88. A forest by the river, safe at first glance. But then came Encho, the flamebird. His fire incinerated soldiers with unnatural precision. It didn't touch trees, only targets hostile to him. The forest became a fiery tomb. Floor 89. A labyrinth of polished, indestructible mirrors. Agami, the mirror dog, raced through reflections, untouchable and unseen. Magic attacks were reflected. Physical attacks missed. Soldiers died to spells bouncing from unseen angles. It was chaos, pure and lethal. Each creature, monkey, rabbit, rat, tiger, snake, sheep, bird, and dog, was a fragment of Kumara. They were not separate beings, but extensions of her 8 tails. These were not just pets. They were her weapons. Despite the Imperial Army's desperate efforts, even when they killed one of the beasts, it returned. Again and again. The illusionary queen who ruled these animal beasts, that was the 9-head, Kumara, the guardian of the 90th floor. By the end of the siege, all 530,000 soldiers who had entered this section of the labyrinth were dead. Not a single one survived. Please follow the next event in the next video, guys. Thank you for listening. Goodbye and see you again in the next videos.